Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for this important session on bridging global citizenship education and education for sustainable development, or as we call GCED and ESD, case studies from Asia Pacific. My name is Karen Chand, representing the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, or SDSN, at its Asia headquarters hosted by Sunway University in Malaysia. Just a few hours ago, the US administration announced a pause on sweeping tariffs on imports that was part of a trade war that shook the world economy over the last couple of days. Meanwhile, violent armed conflict continues to escalate in several regions, including Gaza, Ukraine, and parts of the Sahel in Africa as well, bringing immense human suffering, political instability, and the breakdown of dialogue, breakdown of diplomacy. Unfortunately, these developments underscore the type of world that our learners are growing up in, one that is marked by obvious global interdependence, but also rising geopolitical tensions, misinformation, and urgent environmental and social challenges. As we look towards the future of education, it is clear that our classrooms must be more than just spaces for academic achievement. They must be places where learners build the capacity to engage critically, ethically, and responsibly with the world, to eventually become shapers of a more just, peaceful, and sustainable future. This webinar will reinforce the message that ESD and GCED are more relevant in driving education transformation than it has ever been before, but also that they are not separate agendas. ESD and GCED are intertwined. They are mutually reinforcing. GCED is a core dimension of ESD, just as ESD provides the broader context in which global citizenship becomes meaningful and actionable. In today's session, we will explore how we meaningfully integrate them into real classrooms, taking case studies from Asia Pacific, and how do we support teachers to bring ESD and GCED together in ways that are practical, coherent, and connected to the lives of learners. What does this integration look like in different subjects, across different cultures, and within different national curriculum frameworks? And to tackle these questions is a wonderful panel of educators, thought leaders, and practitioners who are turning policy into practice and helping students to become agents of change, starting with how they learn, think, and act in their daily lives. At this point, please allow me to mention a global initiative known as Mission 4.7, which brings together partners representing UNESCO, the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens, Columbia University Center for Sustainable Development, and SDSN, advocating for the achievement of SDG Target 4.7 at global, national, and local levels. Mission 4.7 builds solutions that help countries invest in actions for quality education. On that note, let's dive into this vital conversation. And if you have any questions for our panelists, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we will try to take as many as possible in the time that we have, or alternatively, you can raise your hand and direct your questions to the panelists. So first up, I would like to invite Dr. Faryal Khan, Program Specialist for Education at UNESCO's Regional Office in Bangkok. Faryal, UNESCO emphasizes how GCED and ESD are actually two faces of the same coin. Could you point to some international global frameworks that that speak to the same. Over to you, Faryal.
Thank you so much, Karen. And I would really like to thank our organizers for inviting UNESCO on board this very important conversation. I mean, given the geopolitical context in which we are all living today, the question is, how are we preparing our learners? And I would just like to see if you can see my slide.
Yes, we can.
And it's about the introduction to global frameworks on peace. Yes. So I would just like to, the question you've just raised, Karen, there is no easy answer to it. And over the last 50 or more years, globally, we've been looking at these issues from one aspect or another. So I'm going to just very quickly go over some of the global framework uh, uh, on peace and education for sustainable development that have been there for a very long time. And today's conversation builds on some of the commitments made by our countries in Asia Pacific. But then specifically, I would really like to focus on the UNESCO recommendation on peace, on education for peace, human rights, and sustainable development. And what is the role of mindfulness in education when it comes to peace and mindfulness, specifically when it comes to global citizenship education, and how we can then integrate mindfulness into educational settings. And I hope that I will answer your questions as I go through this. So I'm not going to go into a long discussion here, but just to flash on the screen, this is not a new topic. I mean, the United Nations was built on the heels of World War II, and the world did not want to enter another situation where we would have, conflict. And so the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is from, right at the beginning of our mandate, ensures the right to education for all and protection of human rights, which of course refers to issues of mindfulness. And then uh, we have the UNESCO Convention Against Discrimination in Education. And whenever we speak about discrimination, of course, issues come in of ensuring equal opportunities, supporting inclusive peace education. More recently, we have the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the SDGs, and specifically Target 4.7, and you mentioned Mission 4.7, really focuses on, within the education mandate, SDG 4. SDG 4.7 particularly looks at peace, sustainable development, and also aligns with SDG 16, which is focusing on peace, justice, and strong institutions. So that we can live together peacefully with each other, but also with nature. So the Paris Agreement is another example, where we are trying to tackle the impact of climate change. And more recently, the recommendation on education for peace, human rights, and sustainable development, which is what I'm going to speak about today. Um, it empowers learners to engage actively in local and global challenges to promote peace, human rights, and sustainability. So, and these are just a few plums that I pulled out, but we all know that when it comes to policy or consensus or global normative standards, they exist. It's how we implement them in practice that really matters. So let me just speak specifically about the recommendation. I won't have time to go into the details, but I've put the scan there, which really gives you, please feel free to scan the recommendation and learn more about it. But basically, the core principles of this recommendation, which was unanimously adopted by 194 countries in November 2023 at the UNESCO General Conference in Paris, it promotes inclusive quality education for all, focuses on the human rights, peace building, and sustainable practices, and supports global citizenship and education for sustainable development. Just as you said, Karen, these issues are intertwined and we need to have a holistic approach to address them. And this recommendation also aligns with other SDGs beyond SDG 4 on, but also SDG 16, 13 on climate action and others. So let us look now to the core point that we want to discuss today, which is how do these tools and recommendations look at mindfulness as a tool for education for peace, for living together harmoniously with each other, and also taking care of nature and the world we live in. So mindfulness, when it comes to social and emotional learning, mindfulness enhances our self-awareness, self-regulation, and also empathy. And these are core elements of socio-emotional learning. And it can also help reduce stress and promotes peaceful cooperative behavior in the classroom. And what happens in the classroom then is what prepares the learners for life. But mindfulness, why are we even talking about this today? It builds resilience. Look at what is happening in the political context, and natural disasters that we are surrounded. We've just come out of an earthquake in Thailand just a few days ago, and in Myanmar, the impact, the losses have been tremendous. But mindfulness supports recovery from challenging situations and helps us to build the emotional resilience, helping us to, cope with these situations, deal with them, and promote peace and human rights rather than to, have maybe a negative reaction, if I may say so. And emotional regulation, it helps learners manage stress, promoting a peaceful, productive learning environment. So when it comes to mindfulness and global citizenship education in particularly, and looking at the recommendation on education for peace, human rights, and sustainable development, last year, Karen, you joined us in Bangkok and we had the policy dialogue to develop the Asia Pacific roadmap to implement the recommendation. And some of the issues that have come up in this Asia Pacific roadmap to implement the recommendation also look at cultivating empathy and passion. And then mindfulness can help learners in classroom to foster compassion, empathy, and a sense of interconnectedness and interdependence that you were speaking about earlier, which are really key components of global citizenship education. But it also can promote critical thinking and reflection in Japan, in Bhutan, in Thailand, in many countries in Asia Pacific. Mindfulness has now entered classrooms where teachers are using mindfulness to promote deep reflection, critical thinking on issues of peace, human rights, and sustainability. And this also enables young learners to become responsible decision makers, to responsibly engage in global and local issues. So let me just look very quickly now to answer your question and to wrap up. So how are countries in Asia Pacific integrating mindfulness for sustainable peace and well-being? I think my colleagues today on the panel are going to go into more country-specific case studies, but overall, teachers' well-being and support is also really a critical point, and especially after COVID, especially after disaster or political conflict situation, mindfulness has become, it's taking more center stage in education by addressing that teachers can also have stress, teachers can have burnout, and to how can mindfulness then be a way to support teachers for their personal well-being but also to support them to create enabling learning environments. And there are several programs that that have been in place to promote emotional regulation, to reduce anxiety, to enhance overall well-being of learners. Because Bhutan, as you know, Thailand, Vietnam, Japan are looking at the happiness and well-being of a learner, and so enhancing overall well-being is really part of the mindfulness-based programs in this region. But I think more and more we are recognizing that mindfulness for conflict resolution really can be a important uh, space to promote inner peace, to enable conflict resolution, and it will be critical for us to enable our learners to learn to live together peacefully with each other, but also with our environment, with nature. So, in conclusion, we are looking at mindfulness today, which I think is, again, you are at the cutting edge. I want to congratulate you for bringing this topic to the core. The world we are living in, mindfulness can really enhance education and support the work that we are doing for the recommendation, but also support our learners. But the question is, are we doing enough of this? And is this still at the fringe, or is it more mainstream practice? And here I look forward to listening also to our other panelists to look at more specific country examples and then to take this dialogue forward. But I really think we need to now move from being at the periphery to more mainstream, how we can really integrate this as part of our educational policy, curriculum, pedagogical practice, and also link it with some of our assessment frameworks. So this is a challenge. We are still at the beginning of the process. While some countries are more advanced, others need to pay more attention to these issues. But please, over to you, and I would love to hear also from our panelists.
Thank you so much, Faryal. Thank you for raising some very important aspects of how education has to transform. You are absolutely right. We are in a world of unprecedented anxiety and stress that are affecting our students, but as you pointed out also, as well as our teachers. And UNESCO has some fantastic frameworks and recommendations in place, but as you also rightly pointed out, it is the implementation that remains the challenge. And we are actually very fortunate that we are amongst a group of very dedicated, practitioners, educators here in Asia Pacific. Many of them are in this room right now. And we need to keep building on these partnerships and working towards building more and more solutions that can be applied and implemented in various local contexts. On that note, I would like to, I think it's now opportune to invite Radhika. Radhika is an associate research scholar at Columbia University's Climate School. She's also the chair of the Mission 4.7 Global Secretariat. And Radhika has, I think, excellent and numerous experiences in aspects like social emotional learning that connect ESD and GCED. And I hope, Radhika, you will be able to propose frameworks that can also be replicated in different country contexts based on your experiences. So take it away, Radhika.
Thank you so much, Karen, and such a pleasure to hear Faryal's overview, because she really portrays a big picture of what is happening, what has happened in the past, and what is needed, and how we are still doing fringe treatment to SEL, and it needs to be integrated. And so my SEL journey, just trying to make it a little bit personal here, that it never was a journey that I was on. I just happened to learn about it between the work that I was doing. So I was working on education for sustainable development, as you know, and that's very much SDG 4.7. We are working on mission 4.7 related with all these different partners, and but still in my head it was very ESD driven. Everything was around environment and nature, and we were doing a lot of curriculum development and everything. But somehow, and of course it's written a lot in literature, that it's very cognitive heavy, and we are doing a lot of cognitive overload on environment and telling students all the facts, but it was not leading to any action. And that was also my feeling, that we are doing a lot of like science based education, but and so here at the climate school at Columbia University, everything was very science driven, and I just thought that there is something missing in terms of how we are treating this whole education for sustainable development, because I didn't see a behavior change. At the same time, I also was working with Professor Sachs and his team on happiness, on a lot on like the happiness framework, and other programs that were going on, and other reports that were going on. So it was very interesting to see how the happiness framework was being developed by a lot of psychologists, but they never talk about environment. They were talking about happiness, they were talking about meditative state, and why Bhutan is doing so well, and all the other aspects. And then I would hear all the education for sustainable development or climate education practitioners saying, when we take these kids out in the open, they become very relaxed, and they are their natural self, and there's so much to learn from. And so in my head, I'm thinking that why are we not blending these two together? When we are saying that children go out in nature, it makes them more relaxed, and why are we not getting the SEL frameworks in? And so I also live in New Jersey. I have two kids who go to the public school system in New Jersey. And New Jersey is a very interesting state, because they have taken up sustainable development, not sustainable, climate education as a part of the standards, and they are doing all the mapping to see climate education is very integrated in all the standards. Then they have also taken the SEL from the Castle Harvard framework. They have taken social emotional learning as their framework as well. But again, two separate things. And in our practice with the UNESCO also, I feel that Mission 4.7 took ESD separately and global citizenship separately. When we talk to UNESCO people, they keep saying it's two faces of the same coin. So I was kind of like, thinking, why are we treating it like this, so separate, but whereas it can be so integrated, and what can we learn from this integration? So I'm still on this path of trying to learn from this integration, and where it has happened, and how it is being worked on. Also, just had a thanks to David Blockstein for the worldwide climate justice seminars. We just had one on SEL examples from Pakistan. So they were giving examples on how SEL has been treated in such a negative way in terms of climate anxiety, in terms of all the negative aspects. But we don't talk, when we link it to environment, it always comes down to being a negative linkage, that there's a lot of climate anxiety, and students don't know how to present themselves, so we need to look at art, we need to look at this, or the other way of treating SEL is very much like a pill. Like, in New Jersey, school students will go and you give them some counseling, and 101 counseling, and that is SEL. I think we all need social emotional learning. We all need climate education. So why are we treating it as like a sanitized way of like saying, you have a problem, I'll give you the SEL pill and you will be fine. It's like a counseling therapy or something going on, and that is all social emotional and mental well-being. I think we need to be thinking on much broader. So all of these, things that are going around, and all of these places that I'm kind of like navigating and thinking through, I wanted to develop a framework which speaks to a lot of things that I spoke about, but in a form that combines things together. So here I'll just quickly share my just one slide that I've been trying to kind of work on. I've been looking at this framework, which talks about sustainable well-being and happiness. Now, there is this huge literature that talks of sustainable well-being, which is again SEL and sustainability and the happiness framework. When we think of now, I know a lot of researchers who are out there, at least in the US, I've been speaking to, they keep saying that happiness is very human centric, and we are not bringing in nature, and we are not bringing in the environmental aspects that speak of going beyond this human self. And when we are talking of happiness, it becomes like very human centric, and we are also being self-centered. And are we, when we talk about sustainability, we have to also look at with living beings rather than just it being human. So I've been saying that there's also another literature which is also talks about collective happiness. It is not just individual or personal happiness that we are talking about here. It is collective happiness, and well-being is derived from sustainability practices, which is all about living with nature and not treating nature as a resource. So based on where I am so far, looking at psychologists, looking at the literature that ESDs develop, looking at global citizenship education, here is something that I've been wanting to look at, and some papers are in the works, and still a lot of research has to be done on this, which is basically that we at the center, we have this happiness and well-being as a framework, which talks about community, happiness and well-being. And how do we derive that? We derive it from positive education or positive psychology, which is a area that psychologists work on. And it's not really, it is somewhat integrated into education, but it is mainly a psychology driven field, which talks about mindfulness, it talks about empathy, it talks about asking questions, it talks about gratitude, very much on the psychology aspect. Okay, so that has nothing to do with environment so far. Now, the other part of this happiness and well-being is education for sustainability, which is what we see for education for sustainable development, SDG 4.7. Mind you, positive education psychologists don't refer to SDG 4.7. They are looking at only mindful behaviors. I'm trying to link the education for sustainability element, where we are saying that we are feeling connected with nature, where we try to collaborate to solve problems related to sustainable issues, being responsible in the community. And those are all the aspects that sustainability ESD is trying to bring in, that deals with the affective nature of human beings, not just behavior change and cognitive, but also the social emotional aspects. And so now we have the ESD part and we have the positive psychology part. Now, how do they come into the schools or come into education spaces is through this pluralistic approaches, which is a concept that a lot of, again, ESD people have come up with, especially David Orr and others. And they are saying that, these pluralistic approaches are basically when you provide spaces in the classrooms to have a discussion. It is not about cognitive ability and fill in the blanks and match the column for sustainability practices or for climate. It is talking about how you bring in the spaces where we have critical thinking discussions, where we are learning to listen to others, where we are bringing in change agents, where we are trying to bring in the justice element and having a lot of dialogue and discussions, because in our classrooms we are so busy teaching to the tests in many places. Again, we don't have spaces where we are just here saying, okay, you can have a different opinion, I can have a different opinion, goes to the wider state that we are in. But for in this case, the teachers need to find places where we are having all these, where we are having dialogues and debates and discussions about communities, sustainability practices, and we come up with solutions after listening to, bringing everyone on the table and understanding what are some critical issues, who's on the table, who's not. And so these are the type of dialogues and discussions we need to have in our classrooms, which are currently missing. So again, maybe this would be a good platform to tell me if there are things that are missing. But here I'm trying to build in this idea that emotions need to drive sustainable solutions, and we need to have in a way bring in the SEL part and bring in the social emotional linkages to sustainability, and finding a way that it can be transacted in some kind of discussions and debates in classrooms. So far, I don't have examples to share. Unfortunately, I don't live in a country that has great examples on SEL, especially currently, where we have so many other things going on and people are not listening to each other. So that's something that we can still, learn from using this particular framework. So hopefully I'll get to hear examples from Asia Pacific countries and see how we can maybe elaborate on this framework or maybe change things and add on things. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Radhika. Thank you so much for also raising other important issues like piecemeal approaches to the various aspects that actually should be seen holistically, instead of like a SEL pill. And I mean, I have so many questions based on the framework that you've created, which I think is genius. I wouldn't expect anything less of you. I will leave that till later in the session, but I would like to now turn the floor to Dr. Rajib Timolsina. He's the Assistant Professor at the Department of Conflict, Peace and Development Studies. Rajib, peace education and human rights education are empowering tools to create a global citizen. How do you think these can be embedded in the school and university systems? Rajib, over to you to share your perspective.
Thank you, Karen. Namaste and warm greetings from Kathmandu. So I am honored to be part of this panel on such a meaningful occasion of the Earth Day. So this occasion this week we are celebrating, I saw, is not just about reflection on our planet. I think it's a reminder that peace, sustainability, and justice are deeply interconnected. And education, especially the value-based education I'm just talking today, is where these intersections become, I think, more transformative. So we are focusing on that. So in my experience, last 13 years, I am based in Kathmandu, teaching at the university as a conflict, peace, and development program. So where I teach peace education, and I work on that. So I realized peace education is not just an academic discipline. It is a way of being and way of thinking, also a way of relating and a way of acting. So it's not only behavior, it's more than behavior. It should come also from our, I think, living and reflections and experiences. So I just like to acknowledge Betty Reardon, the professor. She was from Columbia University. In 1980s, she started peace education program. So now we have multiple. I think when Faryal was showing the framework, I was so touched because I know the first time when the framework was developed at UNESCO, Betty was leading that team of consultation group, and she contributed in that in 1980s at UNESCO. And so last year, 2024, I was hosting a peace education community in Kathmandu to showcase what is happening around Nepal, how we can intertwine tradition with modernity in context of ESD, GCED, and peace education, like broader group. So we focused on discussing the existence of traditional values, like society in South Asia, because I'm mostly working in South Asia, and how also we are slowly, all generation moving towards modernity. So how we can connect the good and the important aspect of traditions and also adapt ourselves to modernity. That's a big challenge for new generation. So when we are teaching, so many times some textbook, like when we science, they try to negate all tradition values. So it's not that. Also, traditional values were evolved through generation and generation to adapt local ecology, local culture, local context. So they adapted a lot of ideas how we can coexist together, right? So many values are very important. So it also, I saw the traditional values, for example, culture. We have music. Most of the communities, we have group dance, music. That fosters empathy, resilience, critical thinking, and also courage to speak out for female and male together. So with the duet and many ideas. So it in many schools and in the system, like we borrowed the modern, we say so-called like Western framework in teaching pedagogy, but we forgot to adapt to our traditional, ecological, our local context. So that I see the lack. Now, when they say, if you look, even in Nepal, when I was growing up, like they are too much focusing on science, hardcore math, biology, and they're saying also, oh, we focus on skills for market, and they are making human rights, peace, environment subjects as optional or even irrelevant. So they categorize as a low priority, but they overlook the fundamental human skills. We have to live in society, complex society. We have to deal every day all these issues. So how can human rights, peace, or ESD or environment can be irrelevant? I don't know. I don't understand that. So how we are undermining our own life actually. So that's why let me say two examples from our from projects. I will bring two examples here. One, as a part of one research project, I was leading peace education research project in Nepal as a mobile arts for peace with grade 6 and 7. And we were visiting several schools. I'll just share one example, the first impression. I reached one school, and one of our first question to the student, there several questions. I'm just sharing one. The question was, what do you understand by the term community? In that classroom, there were 22 students, and they wrote exactly the same definition, word for word from the textbook. A group of families living together inside a limited geography, territory, blah, blah, blah. So this shows how education in Nepal often prioritized rote memorization, mostly in South Asia. The closer you copy the textbook, the higher you score. So we decided to change a little bit the pedagogy in that research. We asked now the students to draw what comes to mind when they hear the word community without using any word, just images with pen and pencil. So we gave them 10 minutes, and after 10 minutes, magic happened. Means when they finished, there were 22 drawings, all are so completely different and deeply personal to those young children. I'll just bring two examples from those 22 drawings. One student draw basketball court as a community. And he explained, community is like a basketball court, basketball team for me, where one person passes the ball, another person score, the score goes to entire team. So that shows the collectiveness. Even the young children can explain now so nicely. And another second picture was, so I still remember very clearly, green field, a cow, goats, a house, and her family. And also there are some flowers, rain. So there are so many things. And she explained that community is not just the people, or it's not also the houses, it's also animals, nature. We all are connected. She explained so nicely, the grade 6 student. These children connect environment, nature, and our lives together. As Radhika earlier mentioned, how community happiness, not only focusing on core like personal mindfulness, it's also about going beyond our inside, also trying to connect with nature, but connected with environment, with which we failed in our textbook. So we too much focus on textbook-based teaching and not focusing on, because all these people also be part of nature, part of community. But we forget that. We try to teach them. So through this activity, actually, I realized they express their lived experience and not memorized definitions. And that's the power of, I think, this peace education, where we aim to connect head, heart, and hand. So we take community problem. So in our generally this practice now, after that, we developed one methodology called mobile arts for peace. There, what we do, we bring in the people, young people or community people together. We form small groups like 2-3 people, and they are given first discussion time. They discuss about the community problem. They choose one to deal that day. And after that, So they are discussed, like they can choose the method, how they can work on that. So painting, drawing, music, or even the simple discussion. So there are three typical questions. What is problem? What can be impact in your life and community? And how can it be solved in your opinion? So as a group, 2-3 persons, they discuss about it, they draw it, and they all come together at the end and they share each other the problem. And they collectively decide what can be done based on the suggestions, solutions. So that is shared at the local community level. We worked in last 3 years with more than 6,000, I think, young people in 13 municipalities. So it works mostly with the municipality, local ward people, local policymakers come together and they listen the problem, possible solutions, also impact in their life. So they collectively decide. And so we have also policy briefs prepared by young people, published more than, I think, 14. We have more than 209 video clips about those processes created by the mobile phones by the young people without any cost, no expenses on that in the community level. So second example I'll bring before I just stop here. So one, blame language to connection language, mindfulness, where I just bring my personal story. When I started a school teacher, it's a long time ago, first my life career job was a school teacher. And I noticed, like when I was teaching this class, in particular year, 2005, I guess, a student constantly arriving late. And one day he entered like class 25 minutes later. And I reacted sharply. You are always late. You are lazy. You don't care about class. My intention was good. I wanted him to learn, but I used the language of blame. And years later, after like when I was working at like 4.7 peace education GCED framework, I realized the communication, how we forgot, like our intention is good, but like how we use blame language. And then now I shifted, reframed it. The same coincidence happened. I just like shift now. Oh, I have noticed you have been arriving 20 minutes later last few days. I'm curious, what's happening? Or would you be willing to talk about it now or later when you are ready? So I think slowly now the shift is entirely, rather than blaming, I'm curious, I want to know. So that's the mostly psychologist, peace psychologist suggesting for the empathetic communication. So in Nepal, now we are working with a lot of teachers, like focusing on this shifting, connection-based, empathy-based, reflection-based teaching pedagogy. Usually what I usually say that our education system in South Asia brought by the colonial era. So it's whole, like for example, I take example of Nepal. We served in British Army for last 200 years. Still we are serving in Indian Army as a colonial legacy. Means all our Nepali young people are trained in school system to become disciplined. Why discipline? To prepare to go to soldier, to the British Army. Means whole colonial system of education focusing not on learning, not on connection with community, connection with nature, because their whole focus was on disciplining people. If you discipline means you are perfect fit for the soldier or army. So we have to shift now, decolonizing education at the same time where we are focusing on ESD or GCED, not only focusing on like just GCED, because we have to shift this whole discipline centric, like which creating more like modern minds based on textbook, which does not allow the connection or collaboration or like conversations or dialogue outside of textbook. So we are focusing on more on this life enriching education. We are saying that we are trying to focus on environment education. We are focusing on understanding this community problems rather than studying the colonial textbook. So the three major points I like to share here is one, curriculum integration. Recently, Nepal government has shifted, like changed curriculum, and they have included, not separately, but they have integrated the elements of GCED and ESD in from grade 1 to 12 textbooks in multiple subjects. As a part of like empathy, human rights, peace education, conflict resolution, environment, caring your planet. So there are a lot of, even about the global citizenship idea. So they are kept in the text like curriculum. One. Second, pedagogical shift. We are using now role plays, as I suggest, share example, dialogues, storytelling, or different way of how we can shift the classroom method so that we can focus more on collaboration work really, like bringing from people they are living in community rather than imposing someone's idea from textbook to the people. So many times community people or young children are treated as a robot or recipient. We are the provider, they are recipient. So we want to shift that, because we want to shift the classroom as a co-creation place where even children are coming with their mind. They have also their experiences, their reflection in society. So they are not the people who are coming empty mind, and we are the one with having all knowledge. We are transferring them. That's whole, I think, traditional education system which brought by the colonial modern system. So we have to shift that. And also now, just like as we prepare students for a rapidly changing world, we must ask ourselves, the last, I think I want to end with this question: are we preparing them to be mindful caretaker of the planet and of each other? If we prepare them this, I think we'll be success in the peace education and human rights education. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Rajiv. I think you also raised some very, very important aspects of how education has to change, to move away from rote learning. And I'm sure in your experience, to use drawings instead of descriptions, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the students probably also felt more engaged with what they were learning. I would love to unpack that further, but in the interest of time, let us now look at some examples from Malaysia. I would like to invite Dr. Subarna Sivapalan. She's the Associate Dean of Research and Knowledge Exchange at the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences at the University of Nottingham, Malaysia. And Subarna, I think you would be able to really bring the higher education perspective as well. And if you could share with us, what are some ways that universities are becoming part of the ESD and GCED movement, and how universities are preparing for global citizens? Over to you, Subarna.
Thank you, Karen. Great to be here today on this panel. I'm a student today, I'm learning from everyone. And I think for me, at least, on a personal level, I feel that there is so much work going on, in all our different countries, and we need to come together actually if we want to make greater impact. We always talk about working in silo within our own countries. That's really very rampant. But I think we also need to start thinking about how to break these silos within the regions that we work with also. So coming together today is just so wonderful for me, at least, to be able to learn from everyone. So when I was approached to be on this panel, I was very excited because number one, it is Asia Pacific. Number two, it's going to be featuring colleagues who I know, and also countries that I love, India, Nepal, and all. And to talk about higher education is also very exciting because I've been within the higher education sector here in Malaysia for about 20 plus years now already. And every day is a new experience. So my background is in education for sustainable development. And I work predominantly within the higher education sector. So I want to, share some context a little bit about why this sector needs to be moving forward very, very rapidly to accelerate GCED and ESD, right? So when we talk about ESD and when we talk about GCED, the tendency is for us to just focus on the K to 12 sector. Right? Now, we know that the K to 12 sector is going to transition into the higher education sector. So there needs to be better alignment between these two ecosystems. So we are familiar, I'm sure all of us on this call, we are very familiar with what ESD is. We know the ESD 2030 roadmap. We know Mission 4.7. We know SDG 4. We know the SDGs. And we know the Greening Education Partnership. So these are all different frameworks that we could tap on in addition to the frameworks that Faryal mentioned, Radhika mentioned, Rajib also mentioned, right? These frameworks, they are very beautiful frameworks, but I think translating these frameworks into the local context becomes very, very important. And that's what Rajib also mentioned just now. So today, being able to share some experiences from Malaysia, particularly within what's happening in Malaysian higher education, gives me a lot of excitement, because I think there are ways in which countries around the world are working towards this. But it's all like a puzzle, and we need to bring this puzzle together if we want to achieve impact that is greater. All right. So let me just talk a little bit about the ecosystem here in Malaysia. So I was given the task to talk about higher education. So for higher education here in Malaysia, from a policy angle, we have what it's called the higher education blueprint. Okay, so on the screen here, I have shared with you two images. Okay, two images. And these images are actually images from the existing blueprint, which is going to end this year, and the new blueprint for the higher education sector that's going to be out, by late this year, early next year, right? So if you look at these blueprints, all right, you can judge for yourself to see to what extent sustainability and ESD, is explicitly mentioned. Okay, so the existing blueprint is coming to an end. So let's focus on the upcoming blueprint. And for years and years, those of us here in Malaysia who has been working within ESD and also HESD, Higher Education for Sustainable Development, we have been advocating for greater emphasis for ESD within the sector. And it's really very, very heartening to see now that the new blueprint is going to include these elements. Now, while not called ESD or while not called GCED, it's going to be called planetary health and sustainability. So for one, I'm very excited to see what's going to be happening. But things look very, very beautiful on paper, right? It's very beautiful as a policy, but the execution on the ground is what we really need to look forward to. So I'm waiting to see what's going to happen, right? I'm waiting to see what's going to happen. Action plans to move this are really, really important. All right. Now, let's talk about my context and the context that I work in. So I said I've been working in the sector for about 20 odd years now. I started in an institution which was very aligned to the oil and gas sector, and I've now moved into a more global university that has presence in 3 different countries. And what attracted me to move to this institution was the fact that this institution was paying a lot of emphasis on the need to advocate for the SDGs and advocate for sustainability. So that was one of the earlier things that attracted me to this institution. So the University of Nottingham will be the case that I share with you today. Now, of course, this is just one institution in the whole of Malaysia. There are many other institutions in our country doing great work. But I think, like I mentioned earlier, we are all working in silo at the moment, and we need to come together if we want to reach greater impact, right? So we all know about rankings, okay? And the problematics with ranking. But putting the problematics aside, right, the rankings are also an opportunity for us to showcase our commitments or our institutional values and the values that we place for the planet. So with the University of Nottingham particularly, as I've shared in the slide here, you can see that, we are ranked, quite okay, I think, 36 in the SDGs ranking in 2025. Of course, we can do much better. So let's look at how we are adapting to this, at the local context, because as I said, we are a university with presence in 3 different countries. We have a beautiful strategic plan with all the right keywords: sustainability, community, education, engagement, partners. But yes, again, how is it being implemented in reality? And that's where the challenge really lies for all of us, right? Because we all have very different interpretations of what these need to be. So I started off in this institution in 2022, after 18 years in another institution. And when I came into the University of Nottingham, I came in straight, I dove right into becoming the head of School of Education. So being in a leadership role gave me an opportunity to actually drive the sustainability agenda in my school. Of course, it was a little bit of a challenge in the beginning to get people to understand why we need to move in this direction, apart from it being a university strategy and all, but really to help them internalize why sustainability is important, why education for sustainability is important, right? So besides the curriculum work that we did, we also looked at research, because when we teach in our school, we practice research-informed teaching. So what I did was to actually revamp how teaching happens, revamp how research happens in our school. And we collectively agreed that as a school, we will be focusing on using the SDGs, as a baseline or as an underpinning framework to move forward the ESD goals in our school. So we targeted a few SDGs, not all. So 4, 10, 11, 13, and 17. All right. So in the next slide, I will share with you how we actualize this, on the ground. Yeah. Now, besides research and teaching, we are also trying to make a mark, on an international level. So we are hosting the Malaysia office for the UNESCO chair. But again, all these are great on paper, but what actually is the impact that is being created for the students, for the staff, right? So as I mentioned earlier, these are some of the initiatives we have actually done, right? Translating strategy into practice. So we have education programs in my school. Obviously, we have 2 bachelor's programs in education. We have master's programs. So what we do is, for the bachelor's programs, every year we have an education showcase, and beginning 2022, we embedded sustainability as a theme within the education showcase that we have, right? So I'm sharing with you just 2 examples of the posters, right, from the showcase. Besides that, again, this may be a very school-centered approach, but beginning 2024, what we also did was also to map our modules, undergraduate modules, against the SDGs, because for us it is important to actually embed this within modules itself, so students understand why this specific module is tagged to this SDG and what is the expected outcome from an ESD perspective. All right. Now, they're all going to be teachers. And the first question they asked me when I joined in 2022 was, why is sustainability important? We are going to be teachers. Why is this important to us? Okay, this is the job for somebody studying environmental science or environmental engineering, or somebody in the sciences. Why do we need to know about these things, right? So some fundamental questions. So these initiatives that we lined out, was to actually develop the basis, or develop the understanding for the students on why this is important. In December last year, so I moved on to another role, at a faculty level role, and this gave me an opportunity to create impact at a larger scale beyond the school. So we have now successfully done this, which is to set up a core sustainability module at the foundation level at our university. And to us, this is really a huge breakthrough because we've never done this before, and it's never been done in any of the campuses. So at a foundation level, meaning these are students who are coming out from the K-12 system and into the university setup. So setting up a foundation level sustainability module and making it core now is going to reinforce the need for why sustainability and ESD is important in our institution. So fingers crossed, we are going to kick this off in September this year. And maybe if there is another round of webinars, I can share with you the experiences from this module. All right. Now, apart from that, we also have student-led initiatives. When we talk about ESD, we talk about the need for the change of values, behaviors, attitudes, and how we can see this being displayed is through getting students to actually go onto the ground, experiment, get their hands dirty, and lead action and lead projects on the ground level and work with communities, right? So it's really nice to have things, theories and all discussed in the classroom. But if you are not able to understand or put this into practice, into context, then what's the use, right? So initiatives, we have EDU 22 and we've got the SOE bulletin as well. But the case I'm going to share with you is actually on EDU 22. All right. So EDU 22, don't ask me why 22. This is the students. It's a secret between the students, but it's like an initiative that my students developed for the school. Now, these are a group of volunteer students who every year curate programs to work with communities, and the SDGs that they target are these SDGs 3, 4, 11, 12, 13, and 17. So we have since 2022 and even earlier, in fact, already been working with communities, I would say, underprivileged communities or underserved communities, and working towards developing access to better quality education for them. So Project Asli, Asli in Malaysia is actually the indigenous community. So we have started working with this community since 2022 in the University of Nottingham, but I've been working with this community since 2015, in fact. So scaling the project to a new institution comes with its own challenges, but again, that's for another day. So what we do in Project Asli is basically to impart, not impart actually, but give our students an opportunity for real world learning. Okay, and to also practice what we call the ESD educator competences, which is learning to know, learning to do, learning to be, and learning to live together. So putting this into context within an actual community is what Project Asli does. So I have a video actually, Karen. It's about 5 minutes. I don't know if we have time for this, but maybe I can show the video later if there's time.
Because we only have 10 minutes remaining and one more panelist. So if
Exactly.
you don't mind, we will try to find another way to share that video after
Sure.
this
Sure,
webinar.
no problem. Yeah, no problem at all. I totally understand. So what I can do maybe is share the link in the chat later, and you can, our colleagues on the call here can have a look at it later. But that video actually encapsulates what we do through these greening communities beyond the higher education classroom at the University of Nottingham, right? Okay, now what can these kinds of real world learning projects actually do, right? What is the impact of it all for those working within this ecosystem, right? So first and foremost, it encourages teaching to impact real world learning. And you are doing work with actual communities, so you're actually going to be looking at the ability to co-develop or co-create. Rajit used this word co-create, right? So I love that word. So you're co-creating solutions with the community, actual problems that they face. And then there's also opportunity for interdisciplinary learning, which is very, very important when you're talking about ESD and GCED. So learning has to occur across disciplines, right? So interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary approaches. And that's what my students were able to do, work with students from various different backgrounds. Then there's also the multi-stakeholder approach, because we had members from academia, from the community itself, industry and NGOs all coming together in this project. Other implications also were seen where, you know, our students not only were able to practice hands-on work, but they also got to start thinking about intrapreneurship and social entrepreneurship, right? Doing work for impact. Then of course, the university rankings. Now I know I've got like very little time left, so I just want to leave everyone with these few key points here, right? How can universities actually accelerate greening higher education? So I have 5 points here. We can talk about beautiful frameworks and all, okay? But I think contextualizing it to your local context is very, very important. Upskilling of academics, very, very important. If you want to bring across GCED and you want to bring across ESD, you need to teach, you need to upskill. You need to upskill the academics, but not only the academics, also the PSS, the professional services staff. And these are some of the things that we learned as we were going through this journey at the University of Nottingham. Intra-transdisciplinary approaches, very, very important. Partnerships. And the last thing, which is very important, is we need to start thinking beyond the SDGs. We've just got 5 years left for the SDGs to be over. What's going to happen after that? So I just want to stop here and leave everyone with this thought about the need to think beyond the SDGs. So thank you, Karen. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Subarna. At the risk of not having time for Q&A, and I would really like to give priority to our panelists, because I think, you know, each of your presentations are also addressing, I'm sure, the many questions that we all have. Subarna raised a very important point about the upskilling of academics and being a school of education. I think the point about really training future educators differently is extremely important. On that note, I would like to invite Dr. Nitas Syed. Nitas is the Director of Education Programs at Bard College in its Beijing office for Asia Pacific. Nitas, could you share with us how can student experiential programs foster leadership skills and mindfulness to help students become protectors of the environment and build in them connections with their habitats and their surroundings? Over to you, Nitas.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Karen. Hi, everybody. I'm Nitas from Bard Beijing office, and we'll be talking about several programs that intersect on aspects of leadership, mindfulness, as well as other things. So really happy to be here. And my email ID is here. I'll try to rush through this presentation so that we can get to the end of it in time. But my email ID is here. Please feel free to write to me and reach out to me if you have more questions or you want to know about something in particular. There will be a decent amount of information coming at you. So how this is structured is that I'm going to talk a little bit about the context, myself, the situating the learner, how we want to talk about curriculum innovation when it comes to integrating different concepts like ESD or GCE, and the way we wrestle with it and how we can solve that. The programs that we're running for Bard College currently in China that exemplify some of these values, and then I will share with you an exciting opportunity for the future also that could be useful for you as well. So getting into the things, I have been in education in China, in India for a pretty long time. I have been also working on the Education for All agenda in 2012, MDGs, and then looking at the SDGs. I have taught in public schools and colleges, and even started my own children's museum at some point. The goal for me has always been to have an education that is inclusive, that is fair, and that is based on experience, that engages the learner. And being in different spaces of education, and in Asia Pacific region, especially China and India, I saw that this was somewhat challenging. There were a lot of banking models of education. You might know this term for Paulo Freire, and fatalistic models of education that are not really helping the learners prosper. So that was me going out and holding workshops out in cities, out in nature, taking students and traveling, and also trying to find out how I really want to bring this sort of education to the world. And the rough sketch of the diagram on the right is trying to find my own ikigai and how that connects to education and what I do in the field. So about 6-7 years ago, in the year 2018, is when I finished my PhD research, which was grounded in trying to understand how environment is being taught in India and China, and how could we improve it, and what is a framework that could come out of that. And three things were critical to the success of environment education, as I found in my research. Was first, it has to be grounded in the place. The context cannot be eliminated when it comes to teaching about the environment. Second, it has to be grounded in critical pedagogies. It cannot be, I'm not going to go into the details of critical pedagogy, but it has to be something that critically engages the learner, and also contextualizing it through not just a global lens, but local and regional lens as well, and going into local knowledges. So based on that, after that, I was also understanding students. It was really important to understand students in these countries. And in China, a lot of students that I have interacted with in the past, mostly students studying at international schools or good public schools, they aspire to study abroad. They want to gain a lot of skills so that they appear to be multifaceted for college admissions. They want to have diverse experiences. At the same time, they struggle with a bunch of things. I have found that they lack certain soft skills. The Richard Louv talks about nature deficit disorder. Some of these students, the only nature they have seen is the park around the house, and this is absolutely true in India and in China as well. We see how global citizen is like a fancy epithet that is used to alienate students in schools and in gated communities. And we call those hard spaces in one of my research publications with my mentor, Greg. So these students also have a lack of understanding of global citizenship and their place in the world. So for instance, when I speak to students, just casually talking to them, I ask them, hey, you plan to go abroad. Do you think you're going to become a global citizen when you go to the States? And they're like, yeah. And then I tell them, hey, but you don't need to wait to go there to become a global citizen. And then the conversation goes ahead. So these students in China, they also don't know how to ask questions. Sometimes they don't know how to ask for help. There's also a word for emotionally broken in Chinese, which is called neihao. There's also a word in Chinese which is called taiping, which is laying flat or procrastinating. So these are issues that exist, and parents are making all the decisions. How can we expect the students to be responsible? So to target all of these issues, and then with that perspective of them going abroad, them being global citizens, them caring about the environment, I have learned a lot of theory. I know a lot of frameworks that have been taught to me. This is from a book, Educating the Global Environmental Citizen, written by my mentor, Greg, who I've also had the opportunity to work with a lot. We have all of these frameworks about how to envision the global environmental citizen, but I always wrestled with how should we bring these frameworks to reality? How do we translate this into teaching and pedagogy? So that was my goal. My goal was to do that. And key questions that I wanted to look at before going into it was, who is the student? Who is the parent? What is the benefit that they perceive? What are we trying to give them? And what do they need versus what do they want? And based on that, I started developing programs in China and then with Bard College. And I'm going to talk about these programs. I'm using a lot of pictures so that you get a visual understanding of what these programs look like. So we started designing these programs on a basically action-oriented approach that is grounded in eco-pedagogy. Eco-pedagogy simply is environmental education with a Faryal lens. So it was about taking students outside. It was giving them real issues to deal with. It was encouraging cross-community dialogue. These students have never engaged with strangers also at times. It is involving them in mindfulness and reflexive practices. It is about also and helping them understand their capacities as young people, as agents of change. Also, we don't box these programs in particular subject areas because we want them to understand that all of these different aspects of what they learn are interconnected, and several other things that I'm going to talk about. So over the past 2-3 years, we have been doing various programs in different parts of mainland China, also abroad. I've taken students to Germany, and this year we plan to go to Kyrgyzstan as well. We take students to Shangri-La, Huangshan, Broadleaf Evergreen Forest, Xiamen, which is by the sea, where students go and interact with the native Hakka people, and obviously Yunnan you might have heard of. These are some pictures from the field. So when we take the students out, there's definitely foreign faculty. This is something that the students want, but we are trying to counter shallow ESD models that are superficial. We take them into the field. We make them see a different kind of world in their own country. And I think this is the kind of knowledge that they take with them when they go out to study abroad. This kind of knowledge, being in the country, makes them global citizens also, a good understanding of their local environments. We involve the community. It's a very important aspect. So the guy who's taking the picture, the selfie in the picture is a guy who's a local who was trained to become a forest ranger. He was given training to become a teacher and to lead different workshops. And he's been doing fantastic. I can tell you more about the community and how it has evolved. I'll come to that in a second. And we take students out in the field. We also give them theory, but at the same time, as you can see in this little slide, we're always giving them different aspects. We're giving them even theoretical stuff in a way that they can, first of all, chew on and also think about. Here, this presentation is talking about how Shangri-La was formed and the reasons behind local policy, government policy, and how that's impacting tourism and other things. Students work on real life case studies, which means they're going into the communities. For instance, we tell them about certain problems that the forest rangers are trying to solve, and then they work together to solve it. This goes also back to what Rajiv was talking about, drawing, right? And we tell them to solve it the way they want to. And this is not one of the best sketches, but it's great. And there's some other better ones also, but it's about students critically thinking, problem posing, and trying to really get to the depth of these issues. There's classroom readings, reflections. Every day we have a daily harvest and reflections that we also use different methods for. Students get the chance to interact from other students from all over the country. we also dive into something which is called eco-writing, and then they get feedback on that, a very detailed feedback. All of these different programs that we run culminate in a student project or group work. So, and their own individual presentations, so that they can share with the world, they can become advocates of the kinds of things that they're doing. I'm not going to go into the details, but just giving you a glimpse of what the classroom spaces also look like, right? And how students engage. This is a girl documenting in the Tulo, which is a community. They're making films and all of this kind of stuff. With this, we are bringing a fresh perspective. We're trying to bridge ESD and global citizenship. We're trying to also bring together mindfulness and leadership, because the goal is for these students to overcome their inhibitions to ask questions. They are afraid to fail. We want them to embrace failure, right? We want them to be self-learners. I think that's the biggest thing that students can take away from these programs. We want them to be self-managed. We give them that responsibility, and we give them that through their own decision-making in the process of these programs. So there's a lot of close work that they get to do with faculty, and then we give them a good, honest feedback, and we support them in the coming time, even after the program is over. So a lot of groundwork goes into developing these programs, and these are some of the kind of activities that we have. This is the daily harvest, for instance, and they can either record their voice or they can write about it, or there's different kinds of activities that they do. If we encourage use of AI, so there's different AI frameworks or guidelines that we use when it comes to their own work and brainstorming. It's a lot of fun as well, and we see results. And these are some of the feedbacks, and just taken screenshots and put on the screen for you to see. The student talks about programs provide me a different lens of how people around China preserve the environment. Before all of this, the study of environment merely means a nice subject to get a good grade, but after that, it has become the future career that I would like to choose. So having this kind of impact in 2 weeks is a really, really big thing. This guy also talks about finding my future path is also solving my greatest doubt, which is a big thing. Then this one talks about finding self-confidence and overcoming anxiety. That this goes into the mindfulness and the SEL aspect. This student says, I learned something that is not found in books. So get out of your comfort zone, explain the beauty of the world. So these are students talking about their own experience. And this one, we went out for interviews, and she has learned English for 10-12 years, but she said, I never knew I could use English in this manner, in this fashion. So we want them to find their own place. We want them to find meaning through the programs, and find their own vision for themselves. This student joined the program repeatedly and became a ranger herself at a very young age. And then she didn't know about liberal arts colleges. She went on to joining Grinnell, which is another liberal arts college like Bard. And that's great. That's victory for us. So across the board, students, parents, counselors, social media has been talking about these programs and the impact it has brought to them. The lessons learned, I'll just cover a few very simple ones. First, a win-win is possible. We can integrate eco-pedagogy and global citizenship and mindfulness. There is a balance that can be achieved, but we need some sort of innovation. We need to put behind, get rid of our set ideas of what education looks like, and then we can do that. And also we have to work with the current needs of the students. We need to understand the needs and the wants of these students, and only then we're able to sort of really get them on board as well, because otherwise it doesn't mean anything. We have to address their pain points like we did in our programs for Bard College in China. So curriculum innovation can definitely meet multiple divergent needs. And here the needs are not divergent as such. They're all interconnected. So that's great. And then we can find a pathway to not make it only viable, but relevant. Also for the landscape of today and education. And then quickly, I want to also show you the future and the opportunity that I wanted to share with you. So all these programs are snowballing into something bigger. The communities are being involved, and we're trying to establish a common lab it's basically by the forest, between a forest and a river in rural China. And the goal is for this ecological hub in China to be a hub for all of us to use, to connect people to nature, to protect the ecosystem, for us to revitalize the community and educate people about nature, and also contribute to the forest. So we call it the Common Lab. It's happening in Huangshan. I'm not going to go into the philosophy behind it, but the main stakeholder here is the forest, and we want to protect it, we want to expand it, and we want to revive it. For that, we have 4 verticals. We will have residency, research, recreation, and revival of the forest. And for these, we have certain ideas. For residency, we want artists to come and work with us in their spaces that are given to them. We want researchers, young students from all over the world, from Malaysia or Nepal or the United States, to come and see how different things happen, study the forest, be close to nature. We want them to also engage in recreational activities that do not harm the environment. And then we also want to revive the community along with the forest, so that the benefits of this sort of ecological hub are directly going to the community. So we have secured certain amount of funding from Tencent, and more funding is going to come in. There's a master plan which is in the works, and I'm looking for your support and participation in this. If you have any ideas, about residency or research partnership, or having a virtual office somewhere in the forest, or something else, I'd be very, very happy to talk about it and hear from you. This guy, I always keep him in my presentations because he's a community member who was an ex-hunter, and now he's leading community efforts with us in rural China. He's interacting with our students, and he has a great smile. And thank you so much for being here. Please do reach out. Please do connect with me. I think there's a lot of good opportunities and a lot of scope for work together.
Thank you so much, Nitas. That was so energizing, to say the least. We have come to the end of our time, unfortunately, but the recordings of this entire series will be made available, and hopefully through that platform where the recordings are made available, we can keep the conversation going and keep the partnership growing. It has been an extremely enlightening and energizing discussion this evening. I think what was really clear to me is how we really need a group of people like the panelists that we had at this session to enable the transformation of education that we all envision. And one thing that was really importantly highlighted is how students can be engaged through transformed education, to the point, as Nitas pointed out, that they can even develop and be more clear of their future purpose and their future pathways. And to enable that, we need to really upskill and empower educators and academics. That came out very clearly, because they are really the key enabler to a transformed system. So on that note, I thank you all for your time joining us. I don't know how the last 1.5 hours went by. It was really way too fast. And let's just keep the conversation going. Thank you all so much. Have a good day and a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.